Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome to the Yahoo Sports NFL Podcast. I am Yahoo senior NFL writer Terez Paylor. Here, my main man and fellow senior NFL writer Charles Robinson. And Charles, I'd just like to start the show by thanking the Tampa Bay Police Department for letting you take an hour to do the podcast with me today after you streaked across the field shirtless last night. Thank you. Appreciate you, man. Thanks, guys.
Do you like those? My buns are looking pretty good. I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah. Hey, man, you've gotten in some good shape, man. Like that's,
hey, and honestly, I kind of like a thong. It was pretty comfortable.
It's good. I appreciated your bodies in motion outfit. Get a lot of Janklowitz. All right. Listen. We're here. The season is over. We made it through a season that was trying in a lot of ways, and we had a lot of doubts in a lot of different areas about whether they get done. But they did get this thing done, and it ended on a rather unexpected note. Charles, if I laid out if I'd given you the opportunity to lay out every single possible outcome of this game beforehand, how many would you have gotten to before you predicted that the Chiefs would get their butts kicked and not even score a touchdown against the Bucs in a 31-9 loss in Tampa?
I would have been extremely not scoring a touchdown still to me is one of the craziest things. Like I didn't even, as the game was coming to a close, it was like every time I heard it was like a revelation. I'm like, how is this even possible? I never would have predicted that was it turns out like field goals could beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, exactly. Good. Yeah.
We're like, actually field goals can beat the Chiefs today. So I will say this. Everybody around the league is like, thanks, Todd Bowles. Appreciate the blueprint. We're going to take a look at this one and figure out if there's a way to replicate this, because Todd Bowles is a great case, like Steve Spagnuolo before him and others, for having the MVP, the most valuable person. Yeah, because sometimes it's a coach, it's a head coach, or it's a coordinator who really ends up being the most valuable person on that field. And I think Todd Bowles, all deference to Brady, who did well.
We'll get to him.
We'll get to him. But Bowles was amazing.
Bowles killed it. The Bucs defense allowed 350 yards, which doesn't really tell the whole story, because a lot of those yards came when the game was out of hand. Like Kelsey and Hill, both of whom lit them up in week 12, didn't really do anything until this game was out of hand. So that 350 doesn't mean anything. Only 3 sacks. It felt like a whole lot more. I'm gonna tell you why. And 2 interceptions. But Charles, up front, it's been a long time since we've seen a team get dominated like that in the Super Bowl. 29 pressures for the Tampa Bay Buc defense on Patrick Mahomes. That is the most in any Super Bowl ever. And we're going to talk about like some reasons why that happened, but specifically, we might as well just get into that now, specifically as it relates to 5-man protections. The Chiefs blocked with just 5 men with a few chips here and there on a staggering 92% of their possessions, according to ESPN. That is the 3rd highest in a game since 2016. And I know Chiefs fans and a lot of people are like, man, what's going on with the officiating? No. We can talk about that, and we're going to talk about that, but you got your butt kicked up front. And that's why the Chiefs lost this football game, because I think it says a whole lot about Mahomes that this man ran for almost 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage and just trying to do everything possible. And it just shows football is a team game, and it's still one up front. So what's going to happen? Continued prioritizing on the offensive line, the defensive line, and 2 things. People mock Devin White, right? Going number 5 overall. Your linebackers better be able to run.
Yeah.
This mattered in this game. Watch teams prioritize speedy linebackers, dominant defensive linemen, and offensive linemen. In today's NFL, Charles, it still matters.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll never forget, in leading into that draft, hearing guys who cross-checked linebackers telling me, because I talked to him a lot about Devin White versus Devin Bush, and everybody was like, I want the guy moving toward the line of scrimmage, not the guy moving away from the line. Well, actually, maybe the guy who can turn and run away from the line of scrimmage.
Maybe he can go forward, too.
Yeah,
9 sacks this year.
Yeah.
9 sacks this year. He could really run the alley, man. That guy had a hell of a game.
And as you tweeted at one point, early in the game, when he beat the edge to hit, I can't remember if it was Elair, who it was that was running the ball, but man,
that was unbelievable.
His closing,
unreal.
Woo, he was right on it.
And one thing I'll add too, man, like, so the Chiefs, like, I just asked Patrick Mahomes about this. I'm gonna write about this today. Like, there's a way like you can beat that front even with the 5-man protections, but your execution has to be on point. And what basically I thought it was interesting what it said was we're gonna be who we are. Right. That's what he said. So like that's what they've done all year. They think, hey, we're 14-2, we're the defending champs. We're not gonna change what we do because of we're missing 3 starting offensive linemen from last year's Super Bowl. But early on, I'm just gonna say it, they should have, because we could see this. Charles, even when, just let me get it out, man. Even when the Bucks played a lot of deep, too high safety zone stuff, they took away the deep ball, and that was great. But when a team is doing that to you, the way you get them to commit men to the line of scrimmage by running the football a little bit. And I thought on the few times Edwards-Helaire got the ball, I thought that gave that offensive line a little aggression to take it out on them. And they didn't do it enough. 6 carries for the offense, 6 carries for the running backs in the first half. It just wasn't enough. And I thought that they really missed an opportunity there to help that line, which was overmatched, build some confidence. I thought that was a tactical mistake.
I've been told that it's not important to run the football. I'm gonna keep being petty about saying that and getting clowned by Chiefs.
But this is why I co-signed, though. That's why I co-signed with you. It does. If they're going to play the 2 safeties, you have to make them pay.
And here's the thing, too. I do think that the Buccaneers are a little bit of an example of a team that if you look at their offense over the length of the season, people are like, well, geez, they hit their stride late. Well, when they made those adjustments and Bruce Arians, during the bye was like, okay, look, we're going to lay this out here. Like the way Tom wants to run this, gives him a comfort level. Well, what did they run a lot of? 5-man protections became 6 with a tight end and a lot of play action out of that. So how many, that including the quarterback, that's 8 of your personnel who are all designed inside that box to basically protect Tom and manipulate the defense in a way that makes him successful. And so I thought one of the parts of this game that I thought was probably a little frustrating was the inability for Kansas City to adjust to seeing what was going on to Pat as that game unfolded. I was like, man, this is uncharacteristic. I would have expected them to adjust a little bit more with protection with Pat so he wasn't running around the way he was. And I know, and we'll get into the whole penalty thing.
We'll get to it, but
to me, the statement of this game, it really was truly, it came down to that offensive line, the depth and the ability to adjust and protect Pat in the instances when he needed it. And personally, I think if his toe, clearly, which was an issue, if he had been fully healthy, maybe we're talking about something that's a little bit different, but he wasn't. And I think
they still lose. They got dominated so poorly. They got dominated so badly at the line of scrimmage. Like, here's the thing. Like, I think his toe was an issue, but I don't think it was like it's not like he couldn't move. He was running around and doing stuff. No, maybe the accuracy was off in some ways, but like, it's hard to really put a lot of blame on Mahomes' toe. The man ran for 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Like, he was running. Like, my issue is in this. On the first 2 series, their best gains came with Mahomes scrambling. And these guys were getting home with pressure on 1st and 2nd down, playing a deep zone and rushing 4. Then on 3rd downs, they heat them up a little bit with 5-man press. But in general, it was not hard to see that their tackles couldn't hold up against their edge rushers. They couldn't do it. Charles, when the Bucks rushed 4, it felt like a blitz. So you have to stop that early. I didn't like where that was going from the 2nd series. You have to stop that early. You have to adjust then. And I understand, like, I get it. Like, you are who you are. You're confident in who you are. You put in the game plan. You went 14-2 being who you are, right? But this is a Super Bowl, and you missed Eric Fisher, and you missed Mitchell Schwartz. And it was really unfair for, and difficult for Andrew Wiley and Mike Rimmers to hang on islands against those 2 edge rushers. Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul, they were outstanding. By the way, the Bucks interior, what did I say last week, man? Right, Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh pushing a pocket, and some things happened that I was worried about, which was Suh getting in some licks. So here's what we do know, see. From a just football on-field perspective, the Chiefs' offseason priority, the priority of priorities, overhauling this offensive line. Period, point blank, end of story. If you're going to keep this offense this wide open, 5 men in the routes, Eric Fisher just suffered an Achilles injury. We don't know when he'll be back. He might not be back for the start of the regular season, just based on Achilles healing. You just don't know. So now Mitchell Schwartz, he was out for the whole season, for like half the season with a back injury. You're going to have to find a veteran tackle and probably complement them with a rookie tackle, a top 100 rookie tackle. This is a long point to say number one priority for this team has got to be fortifying the offensive line, because there can never be another game like this where Patrick Mahomes, the jewel of the league, the next generational quarterback, has to run around like that, because everybody's going to stack up on pass rushers and play them against you if you don't run the ball on them, prove you can run the ball on them, and protect Patrick when you really have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's no doubt this is giving the Chiefs plenty to think about, this offseason, not only in terms of roster building, in terms of, the health of some of the guys. I think now, as you said, they're going to have to deal with teams looking at this tape, and here's the thing, it's not easy to find turn and run linebackers. Like I told you, it was funny because we talked about this coming into the season, and I told you, like, all those calls as the season was about to start used to be, or when we're on the road and we're visiting with teams, it always used to be, hey, what linebacker, what offensive tackles coming free, what offensive line depths coming free. It turned into, hey, are any linebackers who can run? Are any of those guys coming free? Who's got a line, or who has too many? Or, are there going to be is anybody getting made available toward the end of camp? And that's because of how this league is now running. You have way too many linebackers. That has become, I think, the number one mismatch priority for teams. Is they're going, let's just, first and foremost, which linebacker can we line up our athletic tight end, or who's going to get screwed and be put in the slot as a linebacker?
You can't play.
Some slot. You can't. No, there's
you
no
can't
way.
play. In today's NFL, if you can't run at any level of the defense, you can't play. I think your defensive lineman got to be athletic. Even V and Sue can run. Did you see Sue lined up as an end on one play, and one of the late in the game, he ended up licking Mahomes? Like, everybody on defense has to be able to run now. Period. Point blank. End of story. And I want to make sure we give some credit to the Bucs, but right before we do that, let's do that by pointing out some stats here about the depth of this loss for the Chiefs. All right, the Chiefs became the 5th team to have a top 5 offense paired with a defense ranked 20th or lower. You know what the record to play in the Super Bowl? You know what the record of those teams are, Charles? 1-4. All right. So you got to be somewhat balanced, right? Other thing, this is Mahomes' first double-digit loss since 2016. He was a Texas Tech Red Raider then. He lost 66-10 to Iowa State. One more thing, and this is unbelievable. I never would have imagined that the Chiefs would be a team to join this club. The 2020 Chiefs joined the 1972 Dolphins and the 2019 Rams as the only teams to fail to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Unbelievable, man. No, unbelievable. But a lot of credit to that goes to Todd Bowles and great defense. But the offense, the story of the game in a lot of ways, Tom Brady, the great Tom Brady, won a 7th Super Bowl ring, 5th Super Bowl MVP. And I wrote this in my column, right? Like, this loss for Mahomes, it goes on his football epitaph. We'll talk about reasons I think they can be back. He seemed upbeat today, but they have a lot to navigate, which we're going to talk about later. They got to navigate some stuff this offseason. But as far as that being a thing, this is not going to become another storyline until Mahomes wins a couple more or they have a rematch in a Super Bowl. It's just not going to – it won't become a storyline again because 7 is so hard to win. But Tom Brady, unbelievable performance, 21 of 29 in a very play-action-centric offense that reminded you of several of his last Super Bowl wins in New England. Run the ball, protect the ball, play action, good shots. I thought it was a great game plan by Byron Leftwich, who didn't even get a single head coaching interview. That will change next offseason. And this also marks the 5th time that Brady has won Super Bowl MVP. He's the only player in the history of the league to do so. He also broke his own mark for oldest player to ever win a Super Bowl. And I'm just going to throw this to you. with the Pats going 7-9 and finishing with Bill Belichick's worst record since 2000, Tom wins, right?
Well, I think you now have to look at – we're always going to connect these two guys, Tom and Bill. Always.
We have to.
It's an eternity of connection. And the thing is, Tom now cemented it. And the way he cemented it was by going, hey, not only am I leaving, and I also think this is part of why he deserved the Super Bowl MVP. He had okay stats, like good stats. You could have probably given it to Devin White or, maybe somebody on the defensive side of the ball. But here's the thing about Tom that I think really earned him that Super Bowl MVP. He imported 21 points in this game. Yep. They trade for Rob Gronkowski, who came out of retirement to do what?
Awesome.
Yeah,
he looked awesome.
And he came to play with Tom. He wanted to leave the page. He was already retired. He's like, I'll come back and play in the NFL for Tom. Antonio Brown scores a touchdown. You can, however you feel about Antonio Brown, obviously it's going to skew a lot of different ways. But the reality is he's on that roster because Tom Brady wanted him added to the fold. That's 21 points that Tom Brady imported himself when he came onto the Buccaneers roster. So, and by the way, 2 ex-Patriots and Tom's an ex-Patriot. So it's 3 ex-Patriots who end up scoring 21 points. And I made the joke about Pats fans are like, oh, does this count as part of our dynasty? They're like, yeah, maybe. Maybe this counts as part of our dynasty. So the thing about Tom is at some point, and I thought Arians said it best this morning, first and foremost, when a guy's got 7 Super Bowl wins and the Pittsburgh Steelers have 6 and the Patriots have 6 and
he has more than every other franchise.
Every franchise. At some point you can't just go if you're conspiracy theorists and you say in the league, the league rigged this as engineered. I was around when the league's lawyers were trying to murder this guy into flake, trying to crush him. They did everything they could to crush him. So there's a whole duality there that doesn't make a lot of sense. But secondly, Arians said it this morning. I thought it was really good. He said, look, we had a good I'm paraphrasing here. We had a good roster last year, but we didn't know how to win. And that is something that over the years you do hear from players, and you and I have seen in the mic'd up stuff and the NFL film stuff, is when you hear players talk about Tom
in a meaningful way, in a real way.
Yes. And like an on field, it's happening right now kind of way.
Not an oppressor, not when they get led to it.
Nope. Right. Nope. You're tired, you're beat up, you're facing the Atlanta Falcons and you go to overtime and the Patriots get the ball and you just see Falcons players who are like, oh man. And I thought Leonard Fournette, was great after the game because he sort of talked about how Brady is just this guy who, when he comes in and he says things and he infuses this belief for whatever reason, it really is not bullshit. It's not BS. Like players really truly believe it. And if you've ever played team sports, you always knew when you played team sports who the it kid was or who the it guy was on your team. You always knew who was. When I played in high school, we had this running back. His name was Paul Naderveld. Mm-hmm. Sawed off 5'6", 5'7", but one of the toughest. Like just the way he played. I mean, he weighed maybe $120. And I was 230, okay, like as a high school senior, right? I'm an offensive, like he was twice as tough as I was. Like he was and he was that guy that when he spoke and when he felt like we were going to win in games, I didn't think we'd win. Like he was a guy that I believed in, and I looked at him and I was like, it's juicing me up knowing and following this guy. Well, that happens on every level of sport. And you get to the NFL, those guys who still manage to bring that to that level and then add all the rings and everything else to it, there is a reason why when Tom truly believes something and tells guys and coaches guys and all these things, it really does matter. So
here's what also matters. See, we got to here's another reason. Thank you. Because I wrote a column on Brady's presser this morning, because it just hit me with like a flash of lightning. He also deserved MVP for what he had to do. Bruce Arians today speaking very often about how Tom had to learn this terminology. Tom had to get on the same page of these receivers, and he had to do it in a COVID year.
Yep.
Right? They couldn't practice. They didn't have OTAs. This is one of the reasons why it took them basically 3 months to kind of really get on the same roll, get on the same page. And they ended the season with 8 straight wins. But Bruce Arians' words about how Tom Brady had to learn to do something different in a completely different scheme. This was not, even though the game plan looked like it, like in the playoffs and the last couple months of the season, like they still took more vertical shots than they did in New England. So it was a mixture of no risk it, no biscuit, and the vertical stuff. And Tom had to learn new verbiage. He had to figure that part of it out. And he also had to bond with his teammates. Arians noticed that this was one of the closest teams he's ever been around, which is hard because there's not those natural bonding moments at lunch, in the locker room together. Right. Really. Like it's not the same. It's not the same. Right. And Tom Brady said something after that really hit me, and it was this. You know why they were able to get on the same page so quickly? Because Tom Brady absolutely 100% loves football. Here's what he said. I think in a unique way with the coronavirus situation and all the protocols, it was really like football for junkies, you know? There weren't really a lot of other things to do other than show up to work and play football. And normally there's a lot of other things that go along with playing football. So if you love football, this was a year to be a player in the NFL because that's all that it was. Check this out, Charles. This is what made me go. It was like football camp with all your buddies year round. I really enjoyed that part. And come on, like I can tell you, like,
yeah,
you know, it's just it's like, you know what? Tom Brady, this was right up his alley, basically. That guy's nuts for the game of football. And lo and behold, he gets his revenge on Steve Spagnuolo.
And one of the things too that was interesting, when the Buccaneers were talking to him and really trying to basically recruit him in last March, and they're having these calls with Tom Brady. If you talk to Jason Light and you talk to Arians and you ask them one of the really interesting parts of the back and forth that they had, they'll tell you that one of the things Tom asked. He knew about the coordinators. He knew all these different things about the teams. He knew about the coach. He knew about, he basically had completely versed himself on who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were. But then he asked Jason Light and he asked Bruce Arians about like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, some of these different players. He said, are they good guys?
He knows it matters.
Yeah, he knows it matters. It does matter. Wow. You don't want, honestly, some turds that you have to deal with nonstop, and which is funny because
I know exactly what you're about to say.
Because you bring in Antonio Brown, who did nothing but like win the Emmy. He walked off with 12 turd Emmys for 1 year, for all the different things that he did. But also, I'll give him credit for this. He clearly did impress upon Antonio Brown. Listen, man. You got to pull it back and be about this. Not about you, not about, and you got Anthony Robbins and
he kept that dude in line. He kept that dude in line, man.
The quietest period of Antonio Brown's entire career occurred once he got into the fold in Tampa Bay. He was remarkably quiet. I wasn't a big fan of at times I thought he kind of tried to play himself, all the haters and the victim, I kind of paint himself as a little bit of a victim.
Right. That was ridiculous.
And then I'm like, you know what? Okay, dude, whatever. But he repeatedly talked about, and this has never changed. He repeatedly talked about how grateful he was for Brady sticking with him, Brady being a guy who believed in him, Brady and sticking up for him and all these different things. And again, you can decide how you feel about that. Because I understand you're going to come at this a lot of different ways, and I feel it too, and I think about it too. But
we both do.
It's like you said, Brady decided this was his football camp. These were his buddies, and they were going to, this is what he wanted to engineer. And somehow, some way, and I didn't fully believe this. I was like, when I remember at one point you and I were talking privately, and I remember you and I going, if Brady, and I literally remember you say, I think you said this to me, and we were like texting one day, or maybe we were talking on the phone. You said, if this guy ends up going through Breeze, Rodgers, and Mahomes, to win a title. And even though the quarterbacks don't play each other, you're like seriously, how ridiculous is that?
That's an unbelievable run.
You're 43. You changed. You just went from the AFC to the NFC, a new team, all these different things. And you went through 3 of the most elite. When you stack up the Mount Rushmore quarterbacks, Rodgers, Breeze, and Mahomes are probably all on it. They have to be.
That's like going through Survivor Series. Like going through like Stone Cold, The Rock, and Triple H. Like that's what that's like, I know you weren't expecting a wrestling reference.
No, I was not.
but we got to try to have some fun on this show, just a little bit. See, 5 people out there got it, but those 5 people loved it. No, but I think in a lot of ways, this was a big year for Antonio Brown too, and I think he owes Tom Brady a debt of gratitude. Now I'm not doing the whole. He has issues that still need to get sorted out. But
don't confuse football redemption.
Right.
Life redemption. That's not the same.
Thank you. Because I feel like in a lot of ways, if Antonio Brown finds a way to get his life together and this is it for him, he owes Tom Brady a tremendous debt of gratitude to get him. I mean, it's been 3 months where the guy hasn't been a problem for them, at least anything publicly. And I never thought that was really possible. I really didn't. But he's found a way to make it. So that's one more way, honestly, that Tom Brady earned this MVP. Like he was the most valuable football player on this team. I thought it was really interesting. Arian said that he basically taught these guys how to win and instilled the belief. And I think you saw that really apply to so many players on that offense who got better, right? Like what they did with Leonard Fournette, who's a really talented guy, but like he became James White in this game. Some of those leak passes, some of that stuff where Chiefs are so worried about this other stuff. Oh, here's Leonard Fournette just leaking out, and then he's hard to tackle. I thought he looked great, and Tom Brady has his what he needs, and the Bucs surrounded him with what he needed. And the underrated winners of this game, I thought their offensive line was unbelievable in so many ways. I thought the Bucs offensive line was great. When you go back and watch the tape, trust me, watch this. Anybody. Watch how often they ran behind the right side of the line, right? Big Ryan Jensen, an offensive line irritant of the highest order. Haig, and he is. And Wirfs. I thought Wirfs was unbelievable. That guy's going to be an all-pro. That guy's going to be a multi-time all-pro guy. What a game he had.
And the crazy thing, I was thinking this about Wirfs too, because I when I filled out my all-pro ballot, I'm sitting there staring at Wirfs and is this guy first team all-pro or not?
As a rookie, that's tough.
As a rookie. And
he went 12th in the draft.
13th. Didn't he go 13th?
Oh, yes, that's 13th. Right. Kinlaw went 12th. That's still crazy.
You sit there and you think about, I remember there was a time when you and I were like, Gettleman's taking that guy at 4, right? We're like, he's definitely a Gettleman guy. He's going to take him. And then I remember as we got closer to the draft, it was like, well, he's not tall enough. And is it like blasted out workout numbers and all this stuff? Whatever. And I swear to God, man, you are everybody who says, and probably learn more of it during COVID than ever before, and we're going to learn it especially now with the combine being canceled. Teams, I think, are starting to go, you know what, man, if someone is really just elite on tape, they're just elite. Like, stop screwing around. Like, you can't knock him because you think, oh, well, he runs really fast, so are we actually giving him too much credit? Or he's, no, that's who he is.
His tape was awesome. I'm with you, see, like, his tape was good. He's a good athlete. Don't overthink this. Just because he's 6'4" or whatever. Like, there are exceptions, right? Like, there are exceptions to the rule. At 6'5", he's barely 6'5", I get whatever. I thought he was unbelievable. And it was really, really interesting to see how the Bucs managed to raise their game on that side of the ball.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real quick. We talked about we're gonna talk about this further, sort of what the Chiefs have to do. I thought it was really interesting that as soon as this ended, because like in my mind, I'm like, I wonder if this is the walk-off. Like Brady immediately, no, we're coming back. Arians, he actually said, hell no, I'm coming back to do this again. Gronk has already said he wants to come back. Antonio Brown says he wants to play with Tom. Like all the key pieces all want to come back. Is this Bucs team look, Ndamukong Suh's going to be a year older. There's a lot of 1-year deals. Some money is going to come into this because they had a lot of guys on 1-year deals who I think actually could probably get some looks now. Can they be a better team? Like, is this was November, December, and January indicative of a run to 2021 in which maybe they are a better team than they were?
They're bringing everybody back too, just like the Chiefs did this year. The Chiefs went 14-2 this year. After that was better than the year before. Like, if they find a way to bring back most of this team, they bring back the staff, they bring back the players. Like Charles, like they can do this again as long as they can bring back most people. By the way, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw this game again. Buffalo's going to have to get better to beat Kansas City. And it is incredibly difficult to go to 3 Super Bowls in a row, but the Patriots did it from 2016 to 2018. So again, there's a lot that the Chiefs have to navigate, but I wouldn't mind seeing this again if the Chiefs have a better offensive line.
And Tampa Bay, you're like, okay, what does the NFC South look like? It's in flux. Like New Orleans, we don't know. No. I mean, like the Carolina Panthers are looking for a new quarterback. Yeah, they're trying to get a new quarterback. You got Atlanta that's figuring that out with Arthur Smith. So I mean, they're divisionally, they are in great shape. And then, even amongst the NFC elites, Seattle now, they fire their offensive coordinator. So now they're kind of trying, reconfigure maybe a little bit of what they do on offense. And then, the Rams swapped out their quarterback. I hope Matt Stafford is it. I hope that's what solves all this. So
how about the Packers?
And the Packers, to me, I feel like this is how it should be. I don't know if it is how it will be, but a huge side winner in this game. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I am like texting clips of this game to Brian Gutekunst, to Matt LaFleur, to everybody in administration, to Mark Murphy, to every Packers shareholder, and just saying, can we do this? Can I get this? Can we just do this? Just once. Can you just sell out for me? Can you please completely sell out for me and what I think we need to do? Let me run the offense completely. Let me do all these. Just give me the team for 2 years and let me see if we can do what Tom just did in Tampa Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers is a little bit of a side winner here. And apparently he's also engaged, which is the weirdest revelation of Aaron Rodgers. I really appreciate this. I'm doing great. I got engaged, and then he just keeps moving. I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Here's what I know. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to show that tape to Brian Gutekunst and do the Cuba Gooding Jr. Show me the money. Like, because that needs to happen for sure. Let's talk about some less fun things, though. The penalties became a major storyline in the first half.
Yeah.
By the end of the game, the Chiefs had committed 11 for 120 yards, 7 for first down, while Tampa committed 4 for 39, 3 for first downs. But it was the first half that caught a lot of people's attention.
Right.
Okay? By halftime, the Chiefs had been whistled 8 times for 95 yards. That was a Super Bowl record in the first half, compared to only 1 for Tampa. With the Chiefs penalties running the gamut from offsides, the defensive pass interference, and directly contributing to like 14 of the Bucs' 21 first half points. Right, it led to some swings there. By the way, I went back and checked on this. Some of the penalties were they were judgment calls. The total penalties in last year's Super Bowl, 5. The Chiefs doubled that on their own this year. But there's a recent history of teams having around 10, right? Like the Rams had 9 2 years ago. The Falcons had 9 4 years ago. But the Chiefs had the 3rd most penalty yards in a Super Bowl in history. And you got to go back nearly 5. You got to go back 4 decades, Super Bowl 10, to find another incidents where this is. Charles, what do you attribute it to? Because that's what a lot of Chiefs fans are talking about, even though I'm personally like, listen, maybe if you can block somebody and you got a better game plan, this doesn't matter as much. I'm not for it,
I will tell you that every single losing Super Bowl team, no matter how many whistles were or weren't in the game, they think it was poorly officiated. So that's on. Now that's not to take away. I don't think this was the best officiated game ever.
I don't either.
But I think what takes away from this storyline is the entire second half. Too many things happened. Yeah. Too many things happened in the second half where, and frankly, there were some big plays. Explain to me the Leonard Fournette touchdown run. Okay. Explain to me Antonio Brown beating, Tyrann Mathieu in the end zone for the touchdown.
Here's what happened. Great on great. Antonio Brown beating Mathieu is an ISO. Great on great.
Yeah.
And then, like I've been saying, the Bucs offensive line kicked their butts.
Yeah.
That hole was this big.
And the thing is too, like what mattered to me was, and what really I stopped even thinking about it was, again, it was the second half and how the second half unfolded. But then afterward, I was like, okay, to me personally, I've always felt this way. It has nothing to do with the Chiefs this year, but I've always felt if it's a close game and you're complaining about flags, you got to give it some consideration, because that can swing enough of a game. This was 31-9. And I was like, let me hear what the Chiefs players say. Now, Chris Jones said what he said. Okay, fine.
Yep.
But here's the thing. Frank Clark wasn't hearing it. Tyrann Mathieu wasn't hearing it. Pat Mahomes wasn't hearing it.
That's the right
Andy Reid wasn't hearing it. Travis Kelce wasn't hearing it. All these guys are just like, nope, this is football. This is, you win. Like, to me, I'm like, there are going to be people who are going to be upset about it. Fine, absorb that. But also, as you said, I think Pat Mahomes being under duress the entire game, how the offensive line, was unable to hold up. Frankly, you know what? Pat Mahomes throws, quite honestly, probably the greatest single pass I've ever seen thrown in a Super Bowl.
It's not even crazy.
And it bounces off a guy's face.
Help him. Help him out, guys. Like, really, they play so poorly in some different assets offensively, and and Tampa was so great. Like, I feel like the penalties really there's some of it where it's like a little, ticky-tack. But there's also this, too. The Chiefs were allowed to kind of get away with being handsy in the secondary all season long.
Right.
And I understand you saying, wait, why is this changing? Well, Carl Cheffers throws a lot of flags. You kind of had to know that. And B, once you get whistled for a few of those, you kind of have to adjust.
You do.
I know it's hard to not hold. Like, I get it. But they have to look inward and say, all right, how do we get better there so that if we get that crew again, or a crew that's going to call defensive pass interference, that this doesn't happen again. Like the offsides on the field goal. Now, it would be interesting to hear McCole Hardman ask if he checked to see if he was clear. Because sometimes you see that happen where you ask the ref if you're good, the ref says you're good, and even if you kind of go over a little bit, they'll still give it to you because you checked. So I think it'd be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, when here's what winners do. Like, you lose that game and there might be other reasons you lost it. You can't control the officiating, but you can control how you played. And I think with the people in that room, I think most of them are going to say, okay, here's how we have to get better. Let's use this as motivation to try to get back and avenge this. I wouldn't mind seeing this game again with the Chiefs having a fortified offensive line. I think it could still be the fun game it was supposed to be. But I also understand if people don't want to hear that. But I also say this: who else in the AFC is really positioned to knock them off right now? Buffalo. Well, they got to get better in a few areas too. The Chiefs handled them pretty good, right? Baltimore better improve their passing offense in an offseason where they might not be able to have OTAs. Like, who else? Cleveland's really well coached. They've got some talent and some money.
Let's see if Pittsburgh can get themselves righted from what clearly went wrong down the stretch and healthy. Let's see if maybe the LA Chargers, maybe Staley really turns them on a dime when he walks in. He's certainly got the pieces to do it defensively. Who knows? I mean, again, and let's see what the offseason looks like. If there's a passing camp, none of us knows what this is going to look like in the run up to next season. But this is just like the Patriots when the Patriots were so good for so long. Everybody, that tape doesn't change. You continue to work on what they do well. What do they do well? And you just have to try to figure it out. That's what's going to happen, with Kansas City. So I don't know. There's no telling now. We'll see how it all unfolds for them. And, frankly, let's be real. There are some other not
Absolutely.
There's some off the field things
that they're going to have to navigate too.
Yes.
And you know what?
Serious.
That are very serious and that have some questions that also need to be answered. So let's just go ahead and get to that. This game was played under a tragic cloud. Okay. Andy Reid's son, assistant coach, outside linebackers coach, Britt Reid, was involved in an accident on Thursday evening that resulted in a 5-year-old girl staying in critical condition. I confirmed with the KCPD that she still remains in critical condition, fighting for her life right now. Andy Reid said he's spoken to Britt Reid. He said that he has surgery, that he's doing a little better, but that his heart bleeds for the little girl and the family affected. And he also said that just from a football standpoint, he didn't think that this was like a distraction or an issue. But I do know this. The Chiefs are going to have questions they need to answer. And it's not just from media and people like us. It's from the police. They're going to want to know, okay, right. Hey, like we're going to find out what the toxicology results say, right? But even then, because Britt Reid did admit to having a few drinks, the questions are, where did he have the drinks?
Where did he come from? Right.
Right. When did he have the drink? Did anybody see it? How did he get the, all this kind of stuff is going to have to get answered. And the police are, a little girl is in the hospital. Like the police are going to ask these questions. And I think Wetz, and this is one of the reasons Wetz is so good, man. Like Dan Wetzel, our own columnist, wrote, the Chiefs would do themselves a lot of good by being upfront about what this is and what happened here, because there needs to be some there needs to be some like honesty and
some transparency,
right, about what's going on, right? So, I think you probably have some of the same questions I do, but I thought Wetz's column was like right on the money. Like, they've gotten through the game, and now the questions are going to get asked, not just from media, but from the police. Like, what are the answers?
Yeah, and Britt Reid, obviously, there's a history there, with Britt Reid's had legal issues before. Okay. There were, the weapons charge when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is not the first, issue he's run into with law enforcement. Okay. And obviously this is a different kind of thing. It's an accident, but I think you have to ask yourself is like, what does this mean for Andy in the offseason? Because this is his father. Okay. It's not just the head coach and Britt is one of his assistant coaches, but this is also his father. And you and I have covered staffs long enough to know that coaches and their relationships with their children can dramatically affect what their offseason looks like, how they approach their job, where they move forward. I don't know what any of this means for Andy.
Right. And so I think none of us do. So let's be very clear. We don't know yet.
We have no clue. And so there is going to be a very human element in all this. And aside from Andy and aside from Britt, there's a child here. Okay. And that's really the most important thing right now is what happens with this child.
Absolutely.
And football is it's not even in the zip code of what matters here right now. And,
well said. Man.
This is a lot. There's just a lot there.
A lot,
and it's a I don't care whether it affected the game or not. I think that there's just a lot of soul searching that has to be done here now probably for Andy and probably for his son. And then, as you said, a lot of legal ramifications.
Yeah, certainly for his son, and I think this is one more, like I said a few times here, right? This is one more thing they're going to have to, navigate and deal with this offseason. And it probably takes precedence over a lot of things. So, we'll just see how that goes. You have any other thoughts on it?
No, I just, it's always, it's difficult to sit there and unwrap when football and life intersect like this and not, I'm always reminding myself over and over again, like, stop worrying about what the ramification is for a team. Stop worrying about what the ramification is for the league. Stop worrying about what the ramification is for the personal conduct policy. Because the truth is, when these things intersect like this, like really realistically, at least for a few months, who cares about what it means football wise? It doesn't. Yep. That's not even a factor.
I know.
So
everybody's praying for the little girl here, man. Like that's touching like every household. The city, I think Chiefs fans and people all over the country have raised $300,000 for the little girl through donations, right? So I think everybody's pulling for, and I think that's the priority. Like just hoping that she's okay.
I would encourage people. There is a GoFundMe out there. Yeah. I would encourage people if you're
that's
inclined,
what was through. Yeah, that's what's made. Yeah.
If you're inclined, seek out that GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And just keep this in mind that it's a question about humanity first.
Right.
And then we can worry about the football stuff, garbage, whenever down the line that has to be talked about.
I agree. It's always hard to transition for something so sad, like it's so sad, but that's also a transition we've had to make multiple times over the last
year. Jeez.
And it's a bummer. And so I think we've learned to just kind of go ahead and try to do it. Right.
Yeah,
but please consider, donating to that GoFundMe if you can. Okay. So I'm just going to go here because again, this isn't easy. A few more things we want to talk about, right? As we put a bird on this thing before you and I get out of here for a little bit. Hall of Fame happened this weekend. And, this is one of my highlights of the year. You know me, like I love legacy. I love football. And I wrote on Instagram, like it was really a pleasure, like really an honor to vote for all these guys, right? To help them get in because they've all earned it. Like at the end of the day, football players sacrifice so much for the game and they make a lot of money, but they leave a little piece of themselves and sometimes a lot of pieces of themselves on that field. And it's really, really cool to see so many of them like get the moment when David Baker tells them, hey, you're in the Hall of Fame. Like it's worth it for them to, like your legacy is secure. And Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Megatron, John Lynch, Alan Faneca, Bill Nunn, a great scout for the Steelers who helped build the 1970s dynasty, a former reporter turned scout and with his HBCU connections. I could get behind that. And then two more, just Tom Flores. Go ahead.
Shout out to Jim Trotter, by the way. I want to make sure I mention that. Jim Trotter for a while now has really talked about Bill Nunn, been very, very active in making sure that people understood who Bill Nunn was and the impact that he had. I thought that was really important. I felt really good for not obviously Bill Nunn's legacy, but also
it was so
Jim
necessary.
Trotter. I was like, I'm glad this has got to feel good.
It was so necessary. It was so easy to get behind too. It was so easy. So
you said Flores.
Yep, Flores. Yep, and Tom has been waiting a long time now. Okay, we know Tom had been waiting a long time, and that's the guy. There was a little. I didn't know. Like most of the time, it's a rubber stamp deal when the coaching contribute. But we kind of get an idea of how guys are going to vote, and I do think like most of the time when you get that far. So here's how this works. Each of these committees, right? The senior, the committee, and Drew Pearson, right?
And Drew Pearson, yeah.
So there's three committees outside of the modern era. It's the coach, contributor, and senior. So those committees get together and come together from their pools and nominate somebody that the rest of the general body of selectors, of which I'm a part of, there's 48, say yes or no. Now, most of the time it's a yes because all those pools are so backed up. You only get one a year. You got to get these guys out of here. Sometimes they say no. Every once in a while, Paul Tagliabue was a no because of how he handled the concussions. And I thought Flores was going to get in because, but there were some people who I do think probably pushed back on it. So good for Tom is what I will say. I just wasn't sure. And also good for Megatron, because well, remember I told you Manning was a lock, Woodson was a lock, and I thought it'd be an offensive lineman. And it was Faneca. I was right. And a defensive player. I thought it'd be Seymour or Lynch. Johnson, I thought he was a Hall of Famer. I certainly voted for him, but I just didn't know. I heard enough people who were concerned about the length of his career. And I'm glad it didn't matter because I think we'd look goofy. Megatron was Megatron. Okay? Like this is Megatron. Some guys just passed the eye test. the same thing is going to happen. It's the Gale Sayers effect. Same thing's going to happen to Luke Kuechly. Same thing should happen to Patrick Willis. 7-8 great years, that's enough. Right. Elite years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I slightly surprised it was the very first ballot, but then as I was after he had been inducted, I started to scroll through Twitter and I was looking through a lot of different stuff that I hadn't seen in a while. And I hate to admit it, but you do kind of forget, like when he was in the league, you remembered it. And, but you do kind of forget how absolutely dominant he was and against great players and how, he was that guy that everybody shouted him out where he was on the field. It was a really good class. Rodney Harrison, I'll tell you what, if I'm Rodney Harrison, I'm looking at John Lynch and going, I think I should be in now.
He's going to get in.
Yeah.
He'll get in one day.
Yeah.
He'll have to wait his turn.
Sure,
He'll be after Barber. He'll be after Leroy Butler.
I think one, and another thing too, that was really remarkable to me is every time one of the guys has gotten inducted, we always see that Heisman photo of Manning, Charles Woodson, Randy Moss, and then Ryan Leaf. And I sat there and I stared at it this time. And I had every single time it's happened. But this time I sat there and I was like, now you tell me, out of those 4 guys, 3 Hall of Famers and Ryan Leaf, who has the most important story that probably is most helpful to people? And it's none of the Hall of Famers. Wow. It's probably Ryan Leaf resonates if in terms of who he has become now, how completely naked he has been about everything that he did, everything he had been through in his life. That photo to me it's a 30 for 30 in and of itself. It's a documentary in and of itself because of the guys that are in that picture and how they each all have these different life stories and experiences, and 3 of them go to the mountaintop and then 1 is literally the complete opposite. And yet his story is turned into something that's very inspirational in a lot of ways. And I always forget how much I really like the Hall of Fame induction day. I always forget it. I think it's because I'm not a voter or whatever, but then when that day comes, and then the enshrinement speeches I always really enjoy. But when that day comes, it's fun to sit there and then reconsider all these different guys and the impacts that they've had on the game, and what they left on the table and still made it the Hall. I mean, Woodson's unbelievable, and I still believe he probably left something on the table, and yet he's a first ballot guy. Calvin Johnson, first ballot guy, definitely left something on the table, and yet they were so good that they go in the first ballot.
Yeah. Manning was a 12-second, 2-second deal. That was easy.
Yeah. Was that just the Peyton Manning?
Yeah, it was the Peyton. Yeah, it was easy. Yeah, basically.
Can you tell people? It's my favorite of all the Hall of Fame stories that I never knew, and then I learned obviously over the years. My favorite one that I ever heard is the stand up, say the name, sit down. That's my favorite Hall of Fame voting story.
Put it this way: if you're going to come up with like a list of the greatest players like to ever play the game, the players who've gotten that treatment are basically, you make that list on the players who get that treatment. That's a great way to figure out like the greatest players ever, that you don't even have to make the case. So there's 15 finalists every year, and the 48 people get together to debate them and talk about them. So each of the 15 finalists has a 5-minute presentation from the media member representing the city he did his best in. So Jared Allen, for instance, Minnesota. It was the Minnesota representative who gave his presentation because he did his thing there. And I spoke on him briefly because he's played in Kansas City. So you get what I mean? So, I mean, it's actually a really stressful thing putting together your case. If your guy, you got to shout out to Dave Burkett, our friend, the great beat writer from the Detroit Free Press, who did an unbelievable job with his presentation for Calvin Johnson. I think it mattered. I don't think it was like just Calvin. No, like it mattered. Calvin Johnson had like 25 minutes of discussion. All right. But there's some guys you don't really have to do it for. Now, I did like 5 minutes on Tony Gonzalez just in case. Right. But for guys who were the elite, for Brett Favre, for Peyton Manning, the person charged with giving their presentation gets up, says their name, and sits down. And it's one of the coolest nods you can give to that person's legacy. You don't even have to do it. It's automatic. And one other thing that's really cool too is that it still means so much to them when the knock comes at their door. Like I wrote a story this weekend about how they still were able to make the knock happen despite COVID not being able to bring them to the hotel like normal. And we really got to see during the honor show Charles Woodson crying. You know, Charles, you know you're a Hall of Famer, man. Brett Favre, I remember David Baker, the president of the Hall of Fame, told me when he did the knock for Brett Favre, how he just looked like a little kid. You know, it's a really cool thing, and it's honestly one of the coolest things in my career to be able to at least play an infinitesimal role in helping the likes of those guys, but specifically Nunn, Calvin, who I grew up watching, and Charles Woodson, my boyhood hero. Like it's a cool thing, and it was really fun to be a part of, man. I'll make a deal with you. You help me get an All-Pro and MVP vote. I help you get on the Hall of Fame committee, so we can do this thing fully. I mean, together we're a great team, but I just think it'd be great if we can help each other in this way.
It would be helpful. It would be nice to be able to, talk to, because just like you, we're not allowed to talk about, people, because people are like, who you vote for MVP? I'm like, I can't say who I voted for MVP. Like I can't, like Aikman violated that. And I'm like, I'm not Aikman. Like I can't get away with it. Like I can't tell you.
They'll take your vote.
Yeah. Like I remember Aikman did it on a broadcast. Aikman's like, I voted for Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, what the hell, man? I'm like, Aikman just announced this. So, but yeah, you and I, that'll be the off-season mission for Terez and Charles. What upsets me, and I'll just real quick here, because I know a lot of fans hear it. You get a lot of criticism from people who are like, and even Dan Wetzel. Dan and I are completely apart on this. Dan does not believe that writers should be voting on the Hall of Fame. I don't think he believes writers should be voting on any award, MVP, all pro teams, all this stuff. We're completely apart on this. Completely disagree with Dan. He is literally, he's my brother forever. We will be bonded for the rest of my life. But I will tell you this, the process that Terez and the Hall of Fame voters go through, and I will tell you the All-Pro process, if you could really see what goes into it and how hard people work at it, and JJ Watt goes nuts because TJ Watt doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, and everybody loses their minds about that, and they think like voters just go out there and they don't do their jobs. It's not true. It's just not true. A lot goes into it. The fights in those Hall of Fame meetings, the arguments, the debates, I know those get heated at times. It is a significant portion of work that people put in on these votes. So it really means a lot. And all those voters, particularly Hall of Fame voters, because I know a lot of those guys, yourself included, I've known for years and years, decades, like so 20 years, some guys. And they agonize over it I've told you, I've sat next to people who had Hall of Fame votes in a press box one time and literally watched him send out 200 emails to set up conversations to talk to people in the league about a candidate or candidates that they want to, potentially vote for.
Yeah. So I hope we were able to pull back the curtain there a little bit. We'll just do one more thing here before we get out of here. And that's Carson Wentz reportedly might be traded as soon as this week, with the Bears being a rumored destination. I think a change of quarterback is needed for the Bears. I think this, if it is Carson Wentz for them, I think, okay, this is the ultimate test of like Matt Nagy's ability to coach quarterbacks, right? Like, I think there's no guarantee that'll work because Carson Wentz, if we can be frank, looked like a train wreck last season. I do think that something resembling the Shanahan system that Matt Nagy was using late in the year and something not resembling the Chiefs system would probably be good for him. If they were to trade for him, I'd be okay with it, but I hope that they're committed to utilizing David Montgomery and basically using him like a more mobile Jimmy Garoppolo. And that also means they need to find another, like they either need to re-sign Allen Robinson or get another receiver like Kenny Galladay or something, because like he's going to need that help.
Well, and I would say, from what I understand, a big part of this is John DeFilippo. Flip was in Philly. He's now the quarterback's coach of the Bears. So, you always, what do they always call it? The inside man on the deal. I would say that Flip is a big inside man if this ends up ultimately being the Bears. I will say this though. if the Eagles get 2 first-round picks out of Wentz, as I tweeted, Howie Roseman needs to go ahead and turn in his GM card and take over the U.S. Department of Commerce for the rest of his life. Because if you can pull a trade deal where you get 2 first-round picks out of Carson Wentz, and remember, people are going to go, well, what about Goff? Well, the reason why the 2 first-round picks, they were offloading salary. The Eagles aren't offloading salary; they're eating a ton of the salary. So, it's just a different situation. They're not sending an asset with Carson Wentz to get rid of him. They're only looking for assets in return, and they're not going to. I don't think it's going to be Wentz for another quarterback. Jalen Hurts is their guy now. Man, this is a crazy. I'm going to write a story about how this has become the offseason of the great quarterback migration. That's what I'm calling it, the great quarterback migration. And
it's good because there's going to be a lot of movement.
It's just nuts. It's not all these untradeable, the guys that every time they sign a deal, you and I go, well, they're locked in there for nobody's locked in anywhere anymore. Like almost anybody can be traded now.
Just a real quick thing, because we're getting the guys from Brett.
Guys.
What? Are we sure that he should be getting more than the Alex Smith package? Like, are we sure he should be getting more? Like, the Eagles should be getting more than 2 second-round picks for him? Like, he was so bad last year. I know.
Okay,
I don't know.
I'll give you the response I got. So I asked the general manager, who's real dialed into Carson Wentz. I said, what? Explain to me, like, why? Like, if you're acquiring him, explain to me. I said, is it ego? What gets you past what you see on tape? And the response I got was, it is I can fix it. Like, I know what's wrong. I can fix it. That's what. And then you sit there and you go, look, if it's fine, give up the first round pick. I can fix this guy. I know exactly what's wrong. That's what produces a first-round pick for a guy like Carson Wentz. That's what produces assets. You just have to find that person out there who's not only desperate, but also has the egotistical belief that they know exactly what's wrong and how they're going to fix it.
Yeah, okay. I hear you, and I think that's right. And I'm just saying, I feel like I'd probably be limiting that. I'd do 2 second-round picks. He was bad last year.
I think that's fair.
I'd do 2. That's all you're getting. Little football theory question. We had to drop that in. Especially because we are about to take a break, 2 weeks. We'll be back toward the end of February to cover free agency, the draft, and maybe Charles will drop a conspiracy theory or 2. Check out the Yahoo Sports College podcast because it's still college hoop season. Check out Posted Up with Chris Haynes. JaVale McGee is on this week, and also the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast, rolling all season, all off season, just like us. And it's never too early to start thinking about next year's fantasy team. Follow us on Twitter. You follow me at Terez Paylor. You can follow Charles on Twitter at Charles Robinson. Give the Yahoo Sports NFL Twitter handle a follow as well. And Charles, tell them what else they need to know.
Help us out with some 5-star reviews. We're gonna obviously. I think the next target's 1,100. It would be great to be able to pull that in maybe by the time we hit free agency, so mid-March. Awesome. We're gonna find out what the cap number is. We're gonna we'll have a huge free agency primer. Now we're going to ramp up draft season. I'm pissed we're not doing the combine, but I get it. But please leave us a 5-star review. That helps us out. We're going to head into another kind of weird off season, at least for a few months. Be safe. Please get vaccinated. Like the second I can get vaccinated, I'm getting vaccinated. So just stick with us. We appreciate all the support this year. It was a long season. It was a weird season. And I feel like I know more of our All Juice listeners than ever before. I can't tell you. It's so weird how many names in my Twitter feed are so unbelievably familiar to me now that it's like Chiefly Bacon. Chiefly Bacon was pissed yesterday, and normally I can tell you right now it was a tweet that I would have been like, okay, all right, we're gonna fight now, and then I'm like, oh man, no, I know this guy, like I gotta just be like lay off a little bit, and so my heart goes out to you Chiefs fans. Hang in there.
Listen,
it'll get better.
Listen, I'm really proud of the job we do together, bringing the mix of information both inside and statistics to you guys, and I think we mix old school and new school pretty well. I think our preview podcast last week was on point. We mentioned why it was important to not let Ndamukong Suh take shots on Patrick Mahomes. We mentioned how the Bucs pass rushers are going to be a problem. And I think it's important to remember, guys, that we can embrace analytics and we can and take all that into account. But the best teams, the smart teams, often marry the two. And that's what I think you and I try to do on this podcast. So for those of you who don't appreciate that, I don't know what to tell you. This is what we're going to do, and we're very happy with it. And yes, I'm speaking to someone who reviewed our show. So, Charles, by the way, what was our rating last time we checked?
5 stars.
How many?
We're getting close. I think we're midway to 1,100 reviews, so we're getting there. Let me put it this way: it was enough 5-star reviews to get me the Tron Jesus background now that you see in this live stream. Right. We're going to get you it. It's going to be you next, the two of us.
Eventually. So make sure you guys keep checking out the Yahoo Sports NFL Podcast and making it your go-to source for all your pro football news. He's Charles. I'm Terez. We appreciate you guys. We will see you in a bit. Enjoy this break. It's been a great season. Thank you. You've been with us the whole way. It's been a long year. It's been a crazy year. So let's kind of regroup a little bit, and we'll get with it a little bit down the line. All right. Appreciate you guys. Later.